My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, throughout this series on magic, I've told you that the spiritual practice that I do is called demonolatry. And, you know, when I first went into it, I thought it was going to end up being this very, complex and esoteric and occult subject. And really what I found is when you break it down to its simplest form, again, like we've talked about, demons are simply characters that represent human emotions and human, the things that we have to deal with are human characteristics, right? Things like anger and greed and sloth and gluttony, these things that we can find ourselves trapped in. And so throughout my work, almost 4 years I've been at it now, so much of the work that I've done, I was very conscious about what was going to happen, almost planned it out, scheduled it in a way. I knew the things that I had to deal with, and I was ready to tackle them. Now, of course, along the way, there were things, different paths were created that I had to venture down and explore and ultimately deal with some of those demons. But recently, folks, your friend Victor here, he had a little health scare, okay? So this was a demon that I was not quite prepared to deal with. And so here's what happened. A few weeks ago, I was getting prepared to go out and rake the leaves. It was a beautiful fall afternoon, about 50 degrees outside. I was over at the Mind War Manor, and I told Father Mind War, hey, I'm going to go out and rake some leaves. And now he has quite a big yard, so it was going to be a big project, probably a few hours worth of raking and bagging these leaves, right? And so, like I normally do, I prepared by making a hot cup of coffee, got my jug of ice water ready, took a 20 milligram edible, and smoked some marijuana, okay? Well, here's what happened, folks. About 10 minutes into it, I had just gotten started, right? And I found myself starting to overheat and starting to feel a little woozy. So I went inside and I thought, okay, let me change out of these warmer clothes, because again, it was 50 degrees. It wasn't too bad out, and I had maybe overdone it with the beanie and the hoodie and everything. So I kind of stripped off some of those clothes and I went upstairs and found something a little lighter to wear. And as I was walking downstairs, I was going to go out to the garage to get my work boots on again. And man, I just started feeling really dizzy. And basically, I just collapsed on the couch downstairs. And I said, man, this is not good. This isn't good. Now, folks, this wasn't the first time I'd felt this way. This was my normal, modus operandi for doing work, smoking weed, taking edibles, getting the coffee. And I had felt dizzy in the past a few times before, but I just pushed through it, right? But this time, man, my heart was beating out of my chest, and I thought, this is bad. So I called off the remainder of the workday, and I said, you know what, I got to just take it easy. I went upstairs and laid down, drank a bunch of water, and that helped. And, I had a blood pressure monitoring machine. You put the little cuff on your arm and it takes your blood pressure for you. We were using that for Mother Mind War as she was fighting her losing battle with cancer. And so I said, I better check my blood pressure. And sure enough, it was through the roof, folks. There's two types of blood pressure. There's I can't remember the names of them right now, but there's a top number and a bottom number, right? The top number basically represents when your blood is actually being pumped through your veins and the amount of pressure and through your arteries and stuff and the amount of pressure there. And then the bottom number is how much pressure is still in your arteries and your veins when their blood is not being pumped through, when it's at rest, right? Both of those were really high. So I monitored it throughout the night. I started to feel better. But I thought, the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm not going to go out and do any work or anything. I'm just going to take it easy. And sure enough, I just started feeling dizzy again. Checked my blood pressure. It was through the roof. And this was just after taking a hot shower and, not really doing much of anything. And so I said, I better go to the urgent care at the VA. So I went to the VA. They took great care of me. Of course, they ran some blood tests. They did an EKG on my heart. Everything looked fine. The urinalysis came back. Everything was great. And they said, okay, tell us what's going on. What are you really doing? And I said, I think the lesson that I just learned is that you can't be in your mid to late 40s and think that you can just take a bunch of edibles and smoke a bunch of weed and drink a bunch of coffee. All of these things were really hyping up the blood pressure, just making it so much higher. So over the last couple of weeks, it's been a few weeks now, I have been off of the marijuana. So this is the first time for me in a long time, folks. I started smoking weed when I was 12 years old with my friend Joey, a.k.a. Deog. You've heard me talk about him. He was the one that introduced me to marijuana. And this is literally 30 years worth of use. The only time that I took a break was the 4 years when I was an active duty Marine. But the rest of the time, I rarely took time off. And when it was the realization, when I was at the VA and telling my family what happened and friends and stuff, mostly it was just embarrassment. Going, dude, you're working towards 50 here in a few years, and you think you can just smoke weed and take edibles and all this stuff, and that's just not what it is, man. I just realized that that's not where I'm at in my life anymore. And so again, this was sort of a forceful way of facing my demons. My health, my heart literally told me, dude, you're done. You can't do this stuff anymore. So when I first realized that, when I first came to this conclusion and got over the embarrassment, there was some heartbreak, right? Because again, I've been such a lifelong, marijuana user. And I was pretty disheartened. I really was depressed for a few days going, what the fuck? What am I going to do now? And all of a sudden, I had this very negative outlook on life. Like, this drug was so important to me. It was something that I did. I enjoyed it. It made doing chores fun. It made just sitting around with friends fun, and I was so worried that I wouldn't be able to enjoy life without it. And I know it's only been a few weeks, but that depression, that disheartened feeling, it dissipated just within days. And what replaced it was an elevated feeling of just being healthier and honestly being happier. I find that not only am I still doing all the wonderful things I was doing in my life, right? Spending time with Callie and the Moon Princess, playing with the dogs, caring for my father. I love just doing the simple chores and projects around the house. I was still doing those and honestly enjoying them more than ever. Now, one of the things that I really worried about was physical pain, because marijuana, obviously, if you talk to any stoner, they say, well, I'm in pain all the time and I got to take the weed. And to be honest, what I had felt recently is when I smoked marijuana, it actually made me more conscious of the pain that I was feeling. And often what it would do is it would motivate me to stretch and move and maybe exercise a little bit. But looking back at it, I wasn't really doing as much of that as I should have been. So what's been amazing is, again, over the last few weeks, I've turned back to stretching more, back to exercising more, and much of the pain that I was masking with marijuana is disappearing. And to be honest, it's been, like I said, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I feel healthier now than I have in years. This was, again, not scheduled, not planned, but man, I had to face that demon of marijuana addiction. And I think I overcame it very well, very quickly. So for any of you that are out there who are still caught up in the marijuana use, it does take some time. There's going to be a few days. Remember, I've always said, just give it 2 weeks. Just give it 2 weeks. Find an alternative. And in this case, there wasn't a whole lot of alternatives for consumption. It really was more about, you just got to get up and stretch. You have to get up and exercise. I ride the exercise bike more. It was getting out and, getting into the yard, getting fresh air, doing all the things that we know we should be doing instead of smoking weed, right? So again, I talked about how I had started using Zins recently, the nicotine pouches. Those are gone too. All of that has to go. The only thing that I still have is a CBD vape pen. I think it's half CBD, half THC. It's very low dose. And I occasionally at night before I fall asleep take a few puffs. It's nothing compared to what I used to do, again, where I would take maybe a 20 or even 40 milligrams of gummies before bed, maybe 2 hours before. One of the things that has resulted from stopping marijuana is the dreams, and holy nightmares, folks. Nobody warned me about that. The dreams have been so dynamic, some of them so freaking frightening, right? Very colorful, a lot of sounds. I've been hearing things in my dreams, which is very interesting, not something I'm very used to. Very long dreams when I wake up from them. Often I force myself to wake up because they are so scary. And I really get to remember them quite a bit. So that's been very strange too. But this is just a lesson learned, right? This is, again, that way that sometimes life forces us to face our demons, maybe even when we're not ready. But that's the purpose of magic. That's the purpose of what we're doing here. It's about creating a better path for ourselves. I know that I am on a better path by not consuming marijuana on a daily basis. Now, when I practice magic, again, I have the vape pen with me. I am not going to be doing the edibles anymore. I haven't done mushrooms in well over a year now. But we'll see. We'll see as things progress in my health if I get to a place where I feel comfortable doing that. But it has been, as I go through the rituals of the tarot card pulls over these last few months, it has just been the vape pen. And that seems to be working. It's still some very interesting tarot card pulls. So lesson learned here, folks. Again, your friend Victor, I come out here and I tell you these stories. They're often very embarrassing, very personal, but I do it for a reason. This is the journey. This is the journey of magic, the things that you might be dealing with. So when we return, we're going to talk about a sort of magical technique. It's not necessarily practicing magic, but it's an important part of life. And that is making difficult decisions, okay? And we're going to talk about what it means to make difficult decisions in your life in just a moment. America first. Christ is King. These two slogans have become synonymous with the new right. The problem that we're facing right now is that these two slogans are monolithic. They are not dualistic. One has to come before the other. You cannot have it both ways. This is difficult for so many influencers out there that are right-wing influencers. You hear them talking about America first, but you also hear them espousing Christ is King. There was a recent post that I made a comment on, and I thought that I would test the waters. And underneath the post, I just asked a simple question: America first or Christ is King? Which comes first in your mind? Now, that comment received dozens of replies. The majority of them, honestly, all of them except one, said Christ is King. But one man commented underneath, and he said that you have to think about it a different way. He said, wife and children first, or America first, or Christ is King. And I said, this man gets it. He gets it. He totally understands what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to give you two examples in my life about making difficult decisions when it comes to, like I said, America first, Christ is King, or more importantly, family first. In the weeks and months following the attacks of September 11th, America took a hard right turn. It seemed like all of America became patriotic overnight. Once we learned that it was quote-unquote Islamic terrorists who brought down the towers, those same patriotic Americans, again, almost all of us, we picked up our sword and our shield ready to fight the newest Christian crusade against the Muslims, this Islamic horde that was coming against us. Now, so many people in America, this for the first time, this was really their first time even learning about Islam and Muslims. I know for me personally, that's exactly what happened. So when September 11th occurred, I was still an active duty Marine, serving in the United States Marine Corps, still wearing the camouflage. I was married, and my Gemini twins, my children, were just over a year old at the time. And I had to make a decision. Now, at this point, I had about 6 months left on my contract, my 4-year contract with the Marine Corps. And the decision that I had to make was, do I re-enlist and possibly go die in some desert hellhole on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world? Or do I stay home and raise my children? That decision was very easy. I looked down at my Gemini twins and I said, being your father is more important than fighting someone else's crusade for some patriotic fervor. And so the decision, again, very easy. When my contract came up, I said, I'm out. And that was in the spring of 2002. Now, I didn't want to just abandon the Marine Corps and the men that I had served with. So I continued to work for the United States Marine Corps as a civilian for the next 16 years. I did my 20 years. But that was a difficult decision. It was a difficult decision to make. But ultimately, I know that I did the right thing by putting the priority of being a father first. That was the most important thing. I put it over country, and I put it over God, over this faith. And now back then, I wasn't a Christian at all. You know, it was the furthest thing from my mind, honestly. And now we look back. We look back over these last 20 plus years since 9/11 with this Christian crusade that we fought against the Islamists for the last 2 decades. And what did we get from that? Think about this, folks. Just 7 years after 9/11, the American people voted in their first Islamic president, in a man named Barack Hussein Obama. And now you may say, Victor, he's not a Muslim. He says he's a Christian. Of course he does. Folks, there was an interview between Barack Hussein Obama and a man named George Stephanopoulos. You can look this up on YouTube. They were talking about faith. And Obama did what is called Freudian slip. He said, well, my Muslim faith. And George Stephanopoulos, this weasel, said, oh, sir, don't you mean your Christian faith? And Obama corrected himself. Oh, yes, my Christian faith. The cat was already out of the bag. Now, myself, I knew that a man named Barack Hussein Obama, who spent many years living in Indonesia, going to, I believe, like Muslim schools, obviously this guy wasn't a Christian. But he was able to fool so many Americans. And then this interview occurs, and people still fell for it. Just insanity, stupidity on the part of the American public. You then look at today. We have New York just elected a Muslim mayor. And again, this isn't me hating on Muslims and hating on Islam just because of racism and bigotry, okay? And again, I'm not even saying that Islam or Muslims are our biggest enemy right now. Really, the reason I bring that up is because just this idea that the American people, who were so adamant and patriotic and ready to go fight the next crusade, that we spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East, and all the lives lost from our Marines and our soldiers, our airmen and our sailors, right? It's sickening. And then you look at those and remember those 4 years of the Biden administration. America just sunk into the depravity of filth deeper than we've ever seen it. The perverts, the trannies, the faggots, they were just running rampant throughout our society. There was censorship. This was all happening right off the backs of a stolen election. And the COVID lockdowns, again, that started under Trump. Don't ever forget that, folks. We see America is, $37 trillion in debt right now. Our cities are falling apart. But again, look at the cities in the Middle East. Look what's happened to them. They were desert oases, literally filled with nothing but sand. Where today, as I've said before, they're now the largest, most technologically advanced cities in the world. That's what we got. That's what we got from our Christian crusades. A country overrun by illegal aliens, and legal aliens for that matter. Overrun by fentanyl and other drugs that have killed millions. We have 1/3 of Gen Z being aborted. This is the Christian nation that you all are so proud of. Look where it's gotten you. We are on the brink of disaster here in the West because we cannot separate ourselves from this Judeo-Christian Islamic fairy tale. And you might say, well, Victor, aren't you some kind of Satanist? You're the occult technician. How dare you speak on any of this? For those of you that have followed throughout this series, I've told you that I tried to fucking believe. I tried harder than any of you did, I promise. Let me remind you of my childhood best friend Joey, aka Deog, the member of a Judeo-Christian cult called the 12 Tribes of Israel. You can find them at 12tribes.org. They are the cult that runs the Yellow Deli. When Joe first told me that he had joined this cult and changed his name to Deog, I was very intrigued. I started reading the Bible. I read it from cover to cover. I studied it. I listened to AM radio daily and to the fiery preachers back then. And Joey Deog, he said, listen, come and visit with us every Friday. This 12 Tribes community, they have these open dinners every Friday where you can go and visit with them and get to know them better and know their lifestyle better. And so every Friday, I would pack up my Gemini twins and we would go to the Vista House. So this was in Vista, California. And I would go and we would visit with them. And it was a wonderful time. Again, when I was in California, I was very lonely. I had very little family out there. And it was nice to be embraced by this large community of loving and caring people. We would have these great dinners. There would be Bible discussions afterwards. There would be singing and dancing. But there was something nefarious that went on. Almost every time that I went to this Vista house, one of the I guess heads of the community there, now the 12 tribes, they have communities all over the world. And each little group that they have has a sort of hierarchy. And so in Vista, California, the man who was basically in charge there, his name was Mevaser. This was a ghoul of a man, a real creepy goblin type. And I remember over and over and over again, he would pull me aside and say, Victor, you have to understand that in order to follow Yeshua and come live into the community, that like they did in the book of Acts, where you give up your possessions, you give up your old worldly ways. These people were truly practicing Christianity. And we're going to talk more about that when I do my series on the 12 tribes. He would say, Victor, you understand that in order to follow Yeshua, you may need to say goodbye to your wife and children if they choose not to follow you. And when you do, you will have a new wife and new children and new brothers and sisters. As a young husband and father, those words weighed on me heavily. It was so difficult to understand and to feel unwelcomed, because that's what was happening. The longer that I spent just coming to visit on Friday and not making a decision to join, they started to put the pressure on more and more. The love bombing that I would get when I would first start to visit started to fade away. And instead, again, there was more pressure. But just like I did after 9/11, I looked at my children and said, no, it's family first. They are more important to me. It is more important to me to be a father and raise my children than anything written in your fucking holy book. And so I made a tough decision. After years, it was years of doing this, folks. Reading the Bible, trying so hard. Wanting to believe, wanting to dedicate my life to Christianity. But understanding that it was this zero-sum game. It was one or the other. And I said, no, it's family first. The reason that I'm telling this story, again, because of so many of these new right influencers who out of one side of their mouth talk about America first, America only. And to me, being a nationalist also means family first. It also means race first. Not only putting your family first, but also the white race first. I know that sounds very dangerous to say. But folks, over these last few years, my eyes have been opened to the blatant hate that is pushed towards really white men specifically. The media, the religions, they hate us openly. And this is where this is the corner that we've been put in. But again, I realized when I hear these influencers, these new right influencers talking about America first from one side of their mouth, but then the other side of the mouth, they say, well, Christ is king. It was very confusing. And in so many ways, I have empathy with all of you who are in that boat, whether you are the influencer yourself or you are being influenced by these men, because I've already been through it. This is why I'm sharing this story with you right now. I know what you're going through. I've been saying it as loudly as I can in social media. The West needs to completely decouple from the Abrahamic faiths. All of them. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam need to be completely banned in the West. We have to get away from this death cult. We have to get away from this fairy tale. We have to get away from the contradiction of what you new right influencers are saying. So many of you rail about the Jew. Every podcast you're talking about how you hate the Jews and how they're the enemy and how awful they are. Yet you then, again, out of the other side of your mouth, talk about wanting to bow down to the King of the Jews, this Jesus Christ. You talk about wanting to be the new Israel, the new covenant of Israel. You talk about wanting to be a spiritual Jew. I've never heard of anything dumber. It's disgusting hearing it. And the reason that I have the right to say it, not just because we have the right to free speech here in America, but because I've lived through it. I was in your shoes. I understand. I have empathy for your current mindset. It is a disease. It is a plague. It is a virus in your mind, this fairy tale. You have to wake up from it. Now's the time. We are on the verge of either completely losing the West, completely losing our culture and our race, or we can wake up from these lies. We can come out of these fairy tales and we can build something new. And again, as I've told you before, My childhood best friend. I met this guy when I was 5 years old. Joey. They forced him to change his name to Daog when he joined this Judeo-Christian cult called the 12 Tribes. He's still caught in it. I've talked to him recently over the last couple years for the first time in a decade. And it breaks my heart hearing him just regurgitate these propaganda talking points that his community and his religion forces him to say. For those of you that have been following along, you understand and you know that there are two YouTubers, these pranksters, Reckless Ben and Danny Burke. They went undercover in the 12 Tribes, the Vista community, the one that I spent almost a decade visiting and spending time with. They then went on, they met Meviser, they met all of these people that I knew. They then went on to Colorado where Daog currently lives, and Daog was caught on camera by these men. And what he said, what he was caught saying on camera was this: that the 12 Tribes community had a new mission since their leader died of COVID in 2020. No fucking lie, man. Joe, aka Daog, was caught on camera saying, the new mission of the 12 Tribes is to bring an end to humanity. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? But now, when you listen to folks like Adam Green over at No More News, you have to go over and listen to the No More News podcast. Adam is an amazing guy. He is telling the truth. He is showing the truth. And he plays these clips from the rabbis, from the preachers, from the pastors, who are echoing the same things. The rabbis, the worst of them all, talking about how there's some sort of battle between Esau and this other guy. I guess they were brothers in the Bible. I remember reading the story. I guess they're brothers, and one represents Rome and one represents Israel. And it talks about how the brothers can't be equal. One has to be destroyed so the other can raise, right? These rabbis openly call for and talk about the destruction of the Judeo or of the Christian West. They talk about Christianity as their enemy. And all of you Christians out there are playing into their hands. Because it's not only the rabbis. The Christians are saying it too. They talk about it in a different way. They say that Christianity is going to win. They openly talk about being the new Israel and supporting Israel. Talking about being spiritual Jews, but also at the same time talking about how they're going to destroy the Jew so the Antichrist won't take power or whatever. Whatever. But the fact is these people are in some of the highest levels of our government right now. You hear them talking this same way about the coming destruction of the West, aka the white male. That's who their true enemy is. It is you and I. And it doesn't have to be this way. These are the decisions that we have to make in our lives. These are the difficult decisions that we have to make. In the past, the slogan used to be God, country, family. Today, I think that slogan has to be family, race, and then country. I know that sounds difficult. I know that goes against all of the norms. Sounds racist. Oh no. But we're in big trouble, folks. If we cannot wake up our fellow man if we cannot wake them up from this fairy tale, this nightmare that we are living, and change course soon, we are all in deep, deep trouble. So ask yourself, what decision are you going to make? Is it America first? Is it Christ is King? Or are you finally, and most importantly, going to recognize that it's family and friends that are most important? Again, I've talked about this before. So many of you Christians out there, you can name the complete lineage of the family of Jews, right? It's all talked about in the Bible. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Solomon and David, the whole lineage. You know all of the names, but you don't even know your own lineage. You don't even know your own ancestors. I do. My great-great-grandfather, his name was Thorvald. Thor. Thor. Thorvald. You are looking at a man who comes from the lineage of Vikings, folks. Again, I'm not telling you what to believe, but I'm trying to warn you about what not to believe. All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. This may be a short read today. I know I went long at the beginning of this episode. We left off on page 97 with this. It says here, what applies to the meat food also applies to the consumption of alcohol, tobacco, and other narcotics. The vegetarian will abstain from them if possible, since they resist its tendencies. They will, however, sometimes be much more effective with regard to meat food due to their affinity. All old peoples knew and used narcotic means, and they played an important role, especially with regards to the cult and all kinds of magic. J.W. Howard writes about this, and he says, we know from ethnography that clairvoyance and hallucinations are a frequent effect of certain toxic plants or mushrooms. This shows us that such wonder-acting plants have always been appreciated in some way, be it as a juice like kawa in Polynesia, be it as a powder like cahoba in America, be it as an intoxicant like bahang, B-H-A-N-G, or as a masticatory like henbane, H-E-N-B-A-N-E, laurel, etc. Besides Agnes, wherein the magic fire power is residing, the poison which is creating the ecstatic excitement is standing as a co-equal companion. So again, last few episodes we've talked about the importance of meat, eating meat while you're doing magic. It's how you connect to your animal instincts. Again, the meat is going to provide your body the fuel it needs to actually feel your emotions to their fullest ability. When you eat and consume meat, along with other healthy styles of living, which were talked about a lot during this episode, and doing things like your breath work and the kundalini through semen retention, right? These type of things are going to make you more powerful. If you're just eating vegetables, or if you're just eating junk food and shit, or if you're consuming tons of drugs and alcohol, your body is not going to be in its healthiest state. And it needs to be when you are practicing magic, right? And speaking of, before this episode, I sat down with Callie and the Moon Princess and enjoyed a delicious roast with potatoes and carrots and onions and gravy that Callie prepared for us. It was absolutely delicious, and it fueled my fire for today's episode. And again, we talk about the intoxicants, right? These magic mushrooms. That's the best one that I can promote, right? All of these others, I haven't tried them. We've talked about nicotine and other options that might be available out there. That's fine. But again, the low dose psilocybin, they call them magic mushrooms for a reason, folks. I think that's crucial. It should really play a role in your magical work, okay? Now, this next sentence I highlighted, it says the ecstaticizing effect of narcotic substances always placed them in close connection to the demon world. Again, what are demons? That's just our human nature, our human characteristics, our emotions. When we can tap into our emotions, we use our emotions instead of, as we've talked about before, dulling them with alcohol, releasing them through self-harm, all of these things that I have been guilty of. I don't say these things to shame you. I am empathetic with where you are currently because I've been there before. I'm not coming out here trying to chastise you or demonize you or call you weak or whatever because of it. Literally, this episode, I'm telling you, I just was forced to face the demon of my 30-year addiction to marijuana. I didn't want to, but my heart told me I had to. Otherwise, it was about to fucking explode, okay? This is the work that we do. This is why we commune with our demons. We get to understand what they want from us. We get to understand why they've been causing trouble in our lives and give them what they need, because the demons ultimately want what is best for you. And no, that sounds strange. It sounds the opposite of everything you've been told. And what have we talked about here in the Mind War podcast? You've been lied to about everything else. It's why I started this work. When I finally gave up the Bible and gave up trying to be a believer, and when I said I have to find something different, I said, you know what? If all of this other stuff is empty, all of these other paths that I've taken have led to just brick walls of nothingness, maybe I should do some of the things that the Bible says are evil. The tarot cards, the scrying mirrors, taking the mushroom intoxicants, having out-of-body experiences, facing our demons. Especially the deep symbolism of the process of fermentation has again and again stimulated the fantasy into mystical speculations. Ernest Huerman writes with respect to the portrayal of old Peruvian cults. Okay, so an author, Ernest Huerman, is going to talk about Peruvian cults, and it says this. The plants and fruit juices, which were at all times used to brew intoxicant beverages, have been withdrawn from the normal decomposition during the ripening time. And during this time of being locked in, that peculiar power developed inside the fruit water, aka juice, which communicates with the human and creates in him the same fermentation of a great deal of his juices. The ecstasy is there, which then follows a reaction, because the waste from the own juices cannot be replaced fast enough. The body falls into a deep sleep, which was stolen from the fruit material, by rendering the winter rest impossible. It is this ability for intoxication which the sun created during the winter time, and that the human now wants to take possession of this creation of the winter, which makes this perfectly understandable to me. Okay. So again, we find ourselves this idea that when we take these intoxicants, we fall into the deep sleep, aka somnambulance, also known as sleepwalking. We have to get into the state of sleepwalking, this state of hypnosis. We are doing self-hypnosis by, again, taking the low-dose THC and psilocybin, allowing them to take effect, listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, whichever one you're going to listen to for your nightly ritual, your ceremony. This then gets us into the state of hypnosis. We self-hypnotize. We get into that state of sleepwalking, then we continue on in our ritual. We do our ritual in the state of somnambulance. We do it in this sleepwalking state. We listen to our hypnotic music that we talked about in the last few episodes. We listen to the trance-like music. It keeps us in the trance, right? This is what we're talking about. This is the state of mind and state of being that you must be in to truly practice magic. The old peoples regarded meat, blood, and wine as the most precious things which man could ingest. And if he sporadically abstained from them, then this did not happen because of rejection, but to increase his responsiveness towards these substances. Again, if you are going to use THC and psilocybin in your magical rituals, you should not be consuming them every day because they're going to lose their potency, right? This is very important. It's the abstaining from them, so when you go back to them, they have more power. Again, that's my goal now. Abstain from the marijuana. I haven't done psilocybin in almost a year now. My goal is to get healthier. So when I do go back to them, their effects are going to be even higher. I have been fasting. I know we've talked about that before. So again, many of you know I take my injectable medication every 2 weeks in order to deal with my digestive disorder. I take it every other Thursday. So the Wednesday prior, I don't eat. I fast just for the day into the morning, and then I take my medication, and then I have a meal after that. And I start slowly. Things like scrambled eggs now. I've been drinking this sort of yogurt/milk concoction called kefir. You can find it at your local grocery store. It's delicious. It has all the enzymes and stuff you need for digestion. I've been drinking kombucha almost daily now. These things have really helped me feel better. Again, all of this is just in this short time of moving away from the marijuana, because I was forced to face that demon, that 30-year addiction that I had to this drug, and in really doing what I know I needed to do. The reason that I was able to so quickly jump in and feel healthier and have alternatives for the marijuana, and again, the alternatives were exercise, drinking the kefir, drinking the kombucha, doing the fasting, because I knew this is what I should have been doing the whole time. But the marijuana was leading me not to do those things. And so sometimes we have to have physical reminders of doing the right thing. And this new bracelet here, Victor has a bracelet on. He's got one of those magic strings, right? Well, this isn't a red Kabbalah bracelet, folks. This is a black one, okay? It represents power and endurance and intelligence and stability, right? And for me, it is a reminder to do the right thing. That's why I purchased it. That's why I put it on today. Earlier today, I put it on for the very first time to remind myself, that reminder that I'm doing the right thing and to stay focused on that path. And sometimes we need that reminder. Sometimes we need that idol hanging around our neck. Sometimes we need that idol on our finger or maybe around our wrist to remind us how far we've come in our magical journey, how far we've come in the changing of our aristos, folks. This is it. You're seeing my aristos changing. I was in a situation of being a drug addict, a marijuana drug addict for 30 fucking years. The scenario was, yeah, things are good. I was having fun with it. But I was dulling myself. And now I'm not trying to say that I'm going to elevate and all this stuff and be this higher form or whatever. It's just a small change. That's how the aristos changes. The increasing tendency of abstraction, which equates to the entropic curve of decline of our historic time ring, did let substitute materials take the place of these archetypal substances, so that meat became bread and the blood became wine, and finally water, or at least wine diluted with water, as is the case in the Catholic cult. This dilution and this working with substitute materials are characteristics of this tendency of the world historical process. Our tendency of abstraction has led to the decline of the West. It has led us away from our natural animism and has led us into this diluted substitute material. Again, where instead of eating red meat and drinking red wine, we now dilute it down to bread and water. Or don't they drink grape juice in the churches now? They pour some kind of juice instead. This Catholic cult or whoever else takes the Eucharist, whatever other, whichever other of the 60,000 denominations of Christianity. Oh yes, of course, Christianity is we're all one. We're all fighting for the same path, except there are 60,000 different versions of us. Okay. That's where we're going to leave off today, folks. That was just a page and a half from our reading, because again, this is a long episode. When we get back, we're going to continue on with my magical journey over on Instagram in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to pick up where we left off on my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician. You can scroll all the way down to a post. Better turn the volume down. From, let's see, this was September 10th, 2023. This was just titled Mind War. And we have one of my favorite songs from a band called Ministry. It's called NWO, or New World Order. And what you see there is Uncle Vic at the podium. I'm giving you that the kind of the Uncle Sam finger there. I'm pointing the finger at you, saying, I want you for the Mind War. And this is really one of my favorite videos and pictures, right? So not only does it have Uncle Vic here standing at the podium, but here in the Mind War Studios, on the other side of this podium, this room is not very big at all, but I took a picture. It has my 12 disciples, right? They are here in the room with me. They're all, let's see, it's 9 of them are sitting in chairs. There are 3 of them standing in the back because it's such a crowded room. That was such a fun picture to take, right? It is the composite of 12 different pictures. I had to set up 12 seats here, or 9 seats, and then take a picture of myself in each one of the different locations, each one of the different seats. And then I had to, I believe I used a green screen for this, where I then cut and pasted myself in all the different locations. I mean, this was really the beginning for me of pushing the boundaries of digital editing. Again, I know my digital editing skills are very, very low, right? But that for me is the beauty of my art. I want it to be rough in a way. I want it to be not this polished graphic artist, not diving too far into AI. I've used it just a bit recently to make a cartoon version of Uncle Vic, which I really liked. But again, this was one of my favorite videos here. This was a really big hurdle for me to really get past just the basics of photography and start doing something different. This was a good one. And again, the ministry song, you hear George Bush Sr. talking about creating a new world order. I still believe in the new world order. I think that's what we should be working towards. We were promised a new world. We were promised a new order. And now we demand it. We demand our inheritance. We are not going to let it be stolen from us by the Judeo-Christian Islamic fairy tale. We are not going to let it be stolen from us by globalists and all sorts of immigrants, legal or illegal. We're not going to let it be stolen from us by crime and hatred towards the white man. The New World Order will rise. We will be in charge of it. It is our world to take back. Let's go to the next post from September 11th, 2023. This is my September 11th tribute. It's very simple, as you see there. It's just a black screen. Then the words "never forget" and "never forgive" show up there. You hear George Bush Jr. talking from the rubble of 9/11, talking about the world hears the people who did this, and soon they will hear from us. I then had the words kind of fall as if they were the towers falling. Again, another, I think, simple but powerful piece of art. I really, really like that one. The next post from September 15th, 2023. This was a new moon post. There I am standing at the podium, preparing for my ritual. This second picture there, you see I have both hands open, and I have two obsidian rings. They are like basically big black mirror rings. Again, this was from a company called Dad of Sweden. You can find them at dadofsweden.com. They make amazing silver jewelry, and I really like those rings there. So you can see in the next picture, I pricked my finger. You see the drop of blood on the middle finger of my left hand. And we pulled the card of Astaroth, the 29th demon of the Gwedia. He is the King of Pentacles. And then it's very interesting. If you look at the image there, as a very kind of monster, this monster with a strange face and wings, right? And in the next picture, I tried my best to recreate Astaroth with my own hands by interlocking my fingers with the rings on. You can look him directly in the eyes. This is, again, that idea of evocation, when you allow the demons to come into our world and show themselves to us. Again, the demons aren't going to appear in flesh and blood, bone and sinew in front of us as these giant snarling monsters. They appear to us through our art. We had already talked about that in past episodes. Then we have a picture there with Lucifer. The two rings there basically soaking up his power. Then we have Astaroth there upstairs in the Mind War Manor. I have the black sheet over my ritual area. We have a black and white photo of my 72 demon Goetia worksheet, where I put the drop of blood every month. And then that last picture, again, is just the Mind War Studios here in the light of day. And again, you can see some of the art wasn't finished yet. So our next post from September 23rd, 2023. Let's see, this one was, this I believe is again me just trying to come out in a short video. This is me kind of introducing the idea of Mind War, what we talk about on Mind War. You can see the lighting was bad. Everything was pink, right? I think I was still using my old microphone. It was a cheap microphone set that had a little switchboard with it that I bought from Amazon for $40. You know, it wasn't until I upgraded to this Shure mic, the same mic that, you know, Joe Rogan and all the other big podcasters use. These are about $250. This one sounds so much better. But again, that's an interesting video. Again, just to go back and look at the progress. This is just over 2 years ago that I made this video, and now look at the progress I've made in the Mind War podcast today. So let's go on to our next post. We're really burning through it here today. This next one is from September 29th, 2023. So on the next new moon or the full moon. And it says, do not be afraid of the dark, folks. And this was a nice video. I really like, there's a photo here where you see my sigil. I have a gray one that's hanging on the wall here. I made this sigil here. I made it in multiple different, there's 12 of them, different colors. They're smaller. I made them so that I could use them in my art, my monthly art. And again, I put that black mirror face down on it. And what's really cool, what I really like about it is when you do it that way, the black mirror looks like all of these kind of rivers are flowing through it. They're almost like tentacles coming out of the black mirror. So I pulled the Four of Wands. It talks about what the Four of Wands means there. Just another great video, another wonderful card pull. So we're going to move on again to October 1st, 2023. This was a limited edition Halloween sale, right? So this was, again, one of my first early attempts at marketing for Victory Work Apparel over on Etsy. Make sure you take a look at that. That's where you can get t-shirts, hats with my logo here. And this one was really cool. I really like this. All the hats and the t-shirts that I was selling for this sale were all orange and black for Halloween. I really like that one. A great song from Casey Jones. You hear Freddy Krueger talking in the song there. Again, this was me. I think by now I had purchased the Wondershare / Filmora. It's the worst name for a software I've ever heard. But that's what I use to edit the podcast. So I record them in OBS. I learned that from the boys over at Lemon Party. Ben Avery, he talked about using OBS. And then I started to hear other podcasters talk about OBS as well, which is a free software. It's wonderful for recording your podcast. And then I use, again, Wondershare / Filmora as the editing software. And it's really cool. You can do some really cool things in that software. Now we're going to go on to October 14th, 2023. In this one, this is one of my occult sermons, and this one was titled Burden of Hate. I really hope you folks go and watch Burden of Hate. This is one of my favorite videos. This is one of my proudest videos here. And basically, I talk about the work that we do here in the Mind War podcast. And I really lay it out very clearly for all of you. And that is this. I do not do this work because I love you. I do this work because I hate them. And who are they? They are the organizations, corporations, and institutions that have polluted our minds, poisoned our bodies, and corrupted our souls. That's where that came from. What you hear me repeating it over and over and over again, and it came from this video, Burden of Hate. And as I've told you before, hate is what motivated me to create the Mind War podcast. A multi-year series on healing the mind, healing the body, and healing the soul, right? That's what we're doing here. Those of you who have truly listened to this podcast and have followed along, you know that I am a good man. You know that I am out here promoting healing, promoting love, promoting growth and change. I am not here to destroy. I'm not just here talking about hating things. That's not what it is. But you have to understand, you have to hate things in order to make a change. You cannot, again, be like these Christians who constantly talk about forgiveness, who talk about turning the other cheek. I tell you, forgiveness is a sin. You never forgive and you never forget. That's exactly what I said in that 9/11 video. You never forgive those who've come against you, and you never forget what they've done to you. Because when you do, you then turn the other cheek for them to fucking slap you again. That's not what we do here in the Mind War. We're taking our power back, and we're taking a stand against those who come against us. All right, the next post. This is from October 15th, 2023. This is a new moon. I really love that picture. It is my sigil here, all in black, and it looks like a solar eclipse because that's exactly what happened that day on October 15th, 2023. There was a solar eclipse. One of the things I thought that I would try to do is take a picture of the solar eclipse and do some type of art through there. I literally fell asleep during the solar eclipse, folks. I set all kinds of shit up. I was going to do it. I went in to take a nap and I fucking slept right through it. But the result of it was a much cooler picture. I really love this picture. I turned my sigil into the solar eclipse itself. It's really great. And then you see with the remaining photos there, I went on. We pulled the card, excuse me, Agris, the second demon of the Guedia. He is the Page of Wands. And so we go through and again, just a typical card pull. You see all the different photos there. And then the last post that we're going to go through today is October 21st, 2023. This one's titled American Death Camp. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit, and I'm not going to go over it too much because if you look at Mind War Season 2, I really talk about this quite a bit. But through my guerrilla marketing and my attempts to market what I was doing, maybe a little too early. That's one thing that I learned as I was marketing myself, but I hadn't completed the art project, right? So right now I'm getting a lot of requests to go on other people's podcasts. And I decided to, I made a promise to myself. I have to finish the 7-year art project before I go out and start doing promotions. And the reason I did is because early on, I went out and I started promoting myself. So I found a podcast called American Death Camp. Great group of guys, right? They were part of the Kill Podcasters Network, now defunct. I've talked about that before. They had a call-in thing where you could call in. So I called in, left a little message for them, introduced myself to them. And that's how I was welcomed into the Kill Podcasters Network. I think over the next episode or two, we'll just briefly touch on how that all fell apart and everything. But again, that was cool. That was great for me, especially because by that time, this was late in 2023. I had been at this art project for almost 2 years, and I had been living alone for 2 years, hardly speaking to anyone. I went and visited my parents once a week for about an hour. I rarely talked to anyone else. Those first 3 years, and we've talked about that before. We've heard about it in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice, that this idea of 3 years of seclusion really is crucial for the magician. I understand that not everyone can do this, but I was lucky enough to have that ability to spend 3 years on my own. But this was me trying to reach out. And again, these guys were great. We'll talk later on about kind of how things fell apart or whatever. But that was a fun video, the American Death Camp video. I look back now, very embarrassing. I was so nervous to communicate with other people. I still am in so many ways. I was in those early days, I was reading from a script. And I found that once I kind of abandoned this idea of reading from a script, you get, what you're seeing here today, a much more dynamic podcast where I'm able to free flow off the top of my head more of these important ideas, right? So again, another dynamic episode. This one was full of twists and turns. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.